To set up the problem, first I'll create a schema that is going to own all the application objects. Create user apps identified by apps. And now I'll give him lots of privileges. Grant all privileges to apps. This is the security used by many applications, including, as an example, eBusiness Suite. You have an application owner who is all-powerful within the application environment. Next, I'll create my developer. Create user JW identified by JW. And I'll give him very restricted privileges. Grant create session, create procedure, create any view to JW. So he can log on, he can write code in his own schema, which will let him manipulate objects on which he's been granted privileges, and he can create views in the app schema that can be used by the application users. As the developer, I'll create a function that's going to do my SQL injection. Create a replace function f1, return varchar2, auth ID current user. Of course, it's going to run with invokers rights. Then within an autonomous transaction, there's my injection. Execute immediate, grant DBA to JW, and then return a value to the user who runs it. Now I'll trick the apps user into running that function by creating a view. And this view will look just like the dual table that we all use. Create a replace view, apps.dual, as select JWF1 dummy from all users where row num equals 1. And lastly, let's check what privileges do I have right now. Select star from session roles. As user JW, I've got no roles at all. But now all I have to do is wait, because eventually there will be code in the application that will do the SQL injection for me. It's only a matter of time. So I'll connect as user apps, and sooner or later, the application is going to do something like this. Select star from dual. The application runs that code, back comes dummy X. And as far as the application software is concerned, all is done is query the dual table. But now I'll go back in as user JW. Well, previously I had no roles at all. What roles do I have now? I've got the lot. What I've just demonstrated has been a problem for decades. The create any views privilege sounds safe enough, but it is in fact phenomenally dangerous. However, release 12 finally fixes it. There is a privilege, inherit privileges, that is required to allow developers to escalate their privileges to those of the invokers. And by default, this privilege is granted to public. Select star from DBA tab privs, where table name equals apps. And there we see it. The inherit privileges on the app schema has been granted to everyone. This is done by default in 12c databases for backward compatibility, so that any code which actually relies on this weakness will continue to function after we upgrade. What we need to do, however, to tighten up the system and prevent ad hoc SQL injections is revoke that privilege. Revoke inherit privileges on user apps from public. And now my apps user, when he tries to execute the dangerous code, select star from dual, we get an error. And the error gives you enough information to track down what's going on. What should your action plan be to close this loophole? Because close it you must, especially if you've outsourced your development to some third-party organization. If you've done that, you may have no idea what backdoors on these lines have been built into your product. In release 11, you will have to conduct code reviews. Identify all the invokers rights code in your application and see what it's actually doing. Any invokers rights code is inherently suspect because it might be exploiting loopholes like this. Then once you upgrade to release 12, the problem should be solved. Revoke the inherit privileges privilege that is granted to public and grant it only to a very few trusted developers who really do need it. And then you should be safe. And of course, should you require any assistance from me or my colleagues at SkillBuilders, With enabling security like this, we will be only too pleased to assist.